Welcome, fellow green thumbs, to the deep dive. Ever had that frustrating moment? Where you've nurtured a plant, it looks great, then boom, no fruit. Well, you're definitely in the right place today. We're digging into a case that's got many gardeners scratching their heads, including Kesser. His pepper plants look fantastic, but the flowers just fall off. And hey, if you want to keep getting to the bottom of mysteries like this one, do make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you these deep dives. Okay, so Kesser. Super dedicated gardener. He started off with such promise, right? Got seeds from peppers his tante Grin bought at the shop, nurtured them carefully inside, even got tips from Glitter Fang, you remember, the temp helper down at the garden center's plant school. And they sprouted. Looked beautiful on Oma's windowsill. Grew into healthy little plants. Then, the big move outside. But here's the kicker. The plants flowered, looked like they were all set to produce peppers, but then disaster. The flowers just started withering and dropping off. No fruit at all. Kesser was, understandably, baffled. So he reached out to Mandan i den grønne skjorte, the man in the green shirt, for some expert advice.
And that's exactly what we're here to unpack. It's fascinating, isn't it? A flower dropping off seems so simple, but it's often a sign of something more complex going on. It could be the environment, it could be biology, even genetics. It's like the plant is telling a story with lots of layers. So our mission today is to explore all those potential reasons behind Kesser's pepper problem, from the usual suspects right through to the more subtle factors.
Okay, let's start with suspect number one. Mandan grønne skjorte immediately thought pollination. Why is that often the first place to look, especially when plants, like Kesser's, have been moved around?
Right. Well, peppers usually rely on outside help for pollination. Think wind, think insects. When you bring them indoors, even temporarily, they lose that natural assistance. So if you see flowers form, then just wilt and fall off before any fruit starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, failed pollination is a really strong possibility. It's a classic sign. And moving them adds another layer of stress. The temperature shift, maybe drier air indoors. All that can make it harder for pollination to happen successfully, even if there were pollinators around.
Right, makes sense. So if nature's not quite cutting it, how can Kesser step in? Did Mandan i den grønne skjorte offer some simple ways to, become the plant's personal pollinator?
Absolutely. There are definitely low-tech ways Kesser can help. The simplest. Just give the plant a gentle shake now and then. Honestly, sometimes that little bit of movement is enough to knock the pollen from the anthers onto the stigma. Mimics a bit of wind. For a more hands-on approach, you can sort of play bee, grab a small, soft brush like an artist's brush or even just a cotton swab. Gently dab inside one flower, then move to the next. You're just transferring pollen. It doesn't have to be super precise, just get it moving between flowers. And another point Mandan i den grønne skjorte made was about stability. Try not to move the plants in and out too much. Let them settle. Consistent warmth, good light on that windowsill. That helps them get ready for pollination.
Okay, shaking, brushing, got it. But then the conversation took a really interesting turn. Kesser mentioned his tomatoes were doing great, asked about their pollen, and suddenly electric toothbrushes were involved. Seriously, an electric toothbrush. How does that work? It sounds a bit out there.
Yeah, it does sound strange at first, but it's actually based on some really cool plant biology. Kesser's question about tomatoes was spot on because tomatoes and peppers are related. They're both in the nightshade family, Solanaceae. And they share this characteristic. They have what are called poroided anthers. Basically, the pollen isn't just hanging out loosely. It's tucked inside these little pores. It needs to be physically shaken out. Think of it like getting salt out of a shaker. You need vibration. In nature, certain bees are experts at this. They do something called buzz pollination or sonication. They grab onto the flower and vibrate their flight muscles at just the right frequency. Yeah. And that vibration shakes the pollen loose. So the electric toothbrush. It's a surprisingly effective DIY version of that bee buzz. You just hold the vibrating head against the stem right behind the flower cluster, turn it on for a second or two, and that vibration does the job. It releases the pollen from the anthers onto the stigma. You only need to do it maybe once a day while it's flowering.
That is brilliant. Kesser as a high-tech hoverfly. What a fantastic example of thinking outside the box when gardening gets tough. Love it.
Okay, so pollination, buzzing or otherwise, is a big factor. But Mandan i den grønne skjorte hinted that wasn't the only potential reason for Kesser's flowers to drop, even if they were pollinated. So what else could be causing those blossoms to just give up? That's a key point. Sometimes pollination happens, but the plant itself just isn't in the right state to support fruit development. And a really common culprit here is nutrient imbalance, especially too much nitrogen. Nitrogen's great for leaves. You get this really lush, dark green growth, looks super healthy, but too much of it tells the plant, focus on growing leaves. not fruit. So the plant literally aborts the flowers to save energy for vegetative growth.
Ah, okay. So looking too healthy can actually be a sign of a problem in a way.
Exactly. And on the other side, deficiencies matter too. Potassium is vital for flowering and for the fruit actually ripening. Not enough K, flowers might drop.
Yeah.
Same with phosphorus. It's crucial for good roots and just forming the flowers in the first place. Less commonly, maybe micronutrients like magnesium or boron, but usually it's those big three, N, P, K. Getting the balance right is key.
And what about stress from the environment? Beyond just the dry air we mentioned, Kesser's plants went from a stable windowsill to the great outdoors. That's a shock, right?
Oh, absolutely. Temperature is a huge stressor for peppers. They're quite sensitive. If it gets too hot, especially night temperatures consistently over, say, 24, 26 Celsius, which is around 75, 80 Fahrenheit, the plant gets stressed and drops flowers. It's conserving resources.
And too cold.
Yep, same reaction. Too cold, think below 12 or 13 Celsius, maybe low 50s. Fahrenheit also causes flower drop. It's a survival mechanism. And then there's water stress. This is a big one, especially in pots because they dry out fast. Inconsistent watering is the enemy, letting them get bone dry, then flooding them, then dry again. That cycle really stresses the plant, and dropping flowers is often the result. So yeah, to kind of wrap that up, too much nitrogen, not enough potassium or phosphorus, big temperature swings, hot or cold, or erratic watering, any of those can make flowers fall, even if pollination seemed okay. If flowers appear but drop quickly without starting fruit, think nutrients or stress.
This is fascinating, like detective work. But Kesser added another clue, didn't he? He mentioned those seeds came directly from supermarket peppers, and Mandan and Gringorte flagged that as potentially significant. How does the seed source tie into flowers falling off?
Yes, the F1 hybrid issue. This is a bit more niche, but definitely relevant. Kesser hitting on the seed source was really insightful. See, peppers you buy in the supermarket are often F1 hybrids. They're bred by commercial growers for specific traits, maybe yield, disease resistance, uniform shape, whatever. They perform great in that first generation. But the seeds inside those F1 peppers, they don't necessarily breed true. It's like crossing two different purebred dogs. The puppies might be a mix of unpredictable traits. So the plants grown from those saved F1 seeds can have unstable characteristics, and that instability can show up right in the flowers. You might get flowers where the stigma, the female part, and the anthers, male parts with pollen, are positioned weirdly so self-pollination just physically can't happen easily. Or maybe the stigma isn't sticky enough to catch pollen, or the flower just closes up too fast. Sometimes the pollen itself is the problem. Maybe the plant produces very little pollen, or the pollen isn't viable, especially if conditions like temperature or humidity aren't perfect. So the bottom line is, if Kesser tried shaking, tried the brush, maybe even the toothbrush, and still no fruit set, it's quite possible the issue is genetic. Low fertility baked into the plant because of its F1 parentage.
Wow, okay. So the plant itself might just not be capable, genetically speaking. That's a tough one. Now, Mandanite and Greenwich Shorpay also made a point to clear something up about calcium and blossom N-rot, B-E-R. He stressed this is not why flowers fall off. Can you unpack that? Because BER is something a lot of pepper and tomato growers encounter.
Yes, it's a really important distinction to make. Blossom end rot, BER, is definitely a common headache, but it happens after pollination and fruit set. You see it as that manty, dark, sunken, leathery patch on the bottom end, the blossom end of the developing fruit, not on the flower itself.
Right, I've seen that on tomato.
Exactly. Peppers get it too. The key thing is, it's a problem with calcium, but usually not a lack of calcium in the soil. It's typically an issue with the plant's ability to transport the calcium it absorbs up to the rapidly growing fruit.
Ah, a transport problem.
Precisely. And what causes that transport issue? Often it's fluctuating water levels. That dry-wet cycle we talked about earlier disrupts nutrient flow. Or sometimes too much of other nutrients like potassium or ammonium nitrogen can actually compete with calcium uptake, making it harder for the plant to get enough calcium where it's needed in the fruit. So BER shows up on the fruit, not the flower. If Kesser's flowers were dropping, BER isn't the cause. If his flowers had set fruit and then those little peppers developed dark bottoms, that would be BER.
Okay, good clarification. So any tips for preventing BER for when Kesser does get fruit?
Sure. For future fruit, the main thing is consistent watering. Avoid those extremes. Also go easy on high ammonium fertilizers. Good air circulation helps too. Some people use preventative foliar calcium sprays, but that's more about prevention before it shows up, not really a cure once you see the rot.
Got it. Prevention is key there. Okay, so Kesser's peppers made it outside. They're facing the elements, potentially pollination issues, maybe nutrient stuff. But now, a new enemy, snails. What's the game plan for dealing with slimy invaders?
The garden slug and snail patrol. Yes, they can certainly make a mess of young plants. There are a few strategies Kesser or anyone growing outdoors can try. Physical barriers are one option. Some people swear by crushed eggshells or coffee grounds sprinkled around the base of the plants. The idea is the sharp or rough texture deters them. Worth a try. Anyway, it's kind of a garden hypothesis you can test.
Okay, eggshells, coffee. What else?
Well, if you have the setup, natural predators are great. Chickens or ducks love snails. But that's not practical for everyone, of course. The most straightforward, if a bit tedious method is just manual collection. Go out in the evening or early morning with a flashlight and a bucket, especially after rain, and just pick them off.
The old-fashioned way.
Sometimes it's the most effective. But prevention helps, too. Think about where you plant. Peppers like it sunny and well-drained. Snails like it damp and shady. So choosing a sunny spot helps make it less inviting for them. And watering strategy matters. Try to water just around the roots of the pepper plants, not the whole bed. And watering in the morning lets the surface dry out by evening, which is when snails are most active. Keeping the surface drier helps.
Makes sense. Deprive them of their preferred slimy highway. And didn't Oma have some wisdom on this?
Yes, a classic piece of gardening wisdom from Oma. Den beste Gedning I Kökenhaven, Gardenerens Skeisch, which translates to,
the best fertilizer in the kitchen garden is the gardener's shadow. Meaning, just being out there observing, tending, that's the most important thing.
Exactly. Paying attention is half the battle, whether it's noticing falling flowers or spotting the first snail.
What a fantastic deep dive into Kesser's peppers. We've gone from pollination puzzles and that cool electric toothbrush trick all the way through nutrient levels, tricky genetics, calcium myths, and finally, battling snails. It covers so much.
It really does show how everything in the garden is connected, doesn't it? Every little sign the plant gives you, like a falling flower, is a piece of information. It invites you to look closer, to understand what's really going on. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What little signal is happening in your garden right now that might be telling a deeper story, just waiting for you to figure it out.
A great thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration. Until then, happy gardening.